Single dad driver saved a cop after a fatal crash. But what she did next changed his life forever. The snow fell sideways in shards, slicing through the beams of the headlights like splinters of bone. Claire Mathis's fingers gripped the wheel knuckles pale against the leather. Her cruiser barreled down the icy two-lane road just south of Sandpoint, Idaho, chasing the taillights of a black SUV weaving dangerously ahead. Her pulse thundered louder than the radio chatter filling the cabin. Unit 12, be advised, suspect vehicle matches Bolo from Boise PD. Possible ties to narcotics trafficking. Occupant may be armed, repeat armed and dangerous. Her breath came shallow, fogging the windshield from the inside. She flicked the wipers again, useless against the blizzard that blurred the world white. "Do not engage unless fired upon," came the voice of her Lieutenant Bennett. Stern, cold, calculated. Backups 6 minutes out. 6 minutes. An eternity when death could come in seconds. The SUV suddenly swerved, narrowly missing an oncoming minivan. Claire cursed and jerked the wheel. Her cruiser slid, fishtailing. She wrestled with the steering, caught the road again, tires screaming against the ice. "Come on," she whispered. "Don't make me do this." Up ahead, the SUV veered off Route 41 and onto a snow-covered service road leading into the woods. Claire's gut twisted. No streetlights, no exits, no dash cams in this area. No second chances. She followed. The trees closed in like spectators holding their breath. Pines loomed heavy with snow. Then the SUV began to slow. "Ryan," she said into her shoulder mic, voice tight. "You see this?" No answer. She turned for a split second. Her partner Ryan slumped unconscious beside her, blood at his temple. Damn it, Ryan. Her attention snapped back as the SUV ahead skidded to a halt. Doors flung open. One figure bolted into the tree line. The driver. Claire flung her door open, gun-drawn boots crunching into snow and gravel. "Police." "Stop." The figure didn't. She ran. Her breath burned in her throat, feet sliding hard, a drumbeat of panic and resolve. The trees swallowed the suspect whole. Claire stopped, pivoted eyes, scanning lungs on fire. Then she saw it, the SUV engine still running, its rear window shattered. Something glinted inside. She approached, cautiously, gun up. And there it was, a rifle. Propped awkwardly on the passenger seat. Black matchstock. Loaded. Her eyes flicked to the driver's side. Empty. Blood on the steering wheel. Claire backed up, mind spinning. Why had he run? Why leave the weapon? Why not shoot? Then a rustle behind her. Snow shifting. She spun. Nothing. The blizzard howled louder. Suddenly, tires shrieked behind her. A second vehicle, no, her cruiser. Sliding. She turned just in time to see it crash into the SUV. Metal against metal. Glass exploded. A thunderclap of violence. The world tilted. Then darkness. Pain arrived first. Then sound. Groaning metal. The slow, high whine of a siren fading in and out. Claire blinked. Blood in her mouth. The roof caved in above her. The windshield was gone, snow drifting across her lap like ash. Her leg screamed. Trapped. Her hand fumbled for her radio. Gone. Next to her, Ryan didn't move. And then, A-shape. Outside the wreckage, a man. Tall. Moving through the snow with purpose. She tried to lift her gun. It wasn't there. The man came closer. His coat flapped like wings in the storm. He knelt beside the wreck. "Hey," he said, voice low but firm. "Don't move. You're bleeding bad." Claire blinked at him. "Who? No time. You're going into shock." He reached through the window, carefully cutting her seatbelt with a knife. "I got you." She gritted her teeth as he pulled her free, dragging her out into the storm. Her vision swam. The cold was everywhere now, inside her bones. "Stay with me. Listen to my voice." He tore open a trauma kit, hands working fast. Military, precise. He tied off a tourniquet around her thigh. "Name's Jack," he said. "I'm not a doctor, just someone who's seen worse." You're gonna be okay." Claire tried to focus on his face, but the snow distorted everything. Her body trembled violently, and then, through the blur, she caught it over Jack's shoulder reflected in the shattered window of the cruiser. The suspect. The man she'd shot at. He stood in the distance just past the tree line, unarmed, not pointing anything, just watching. Her breath hitched, her heart sank. Had he even had a weapon when she fired? Had she pulled the trigger too fast? A mistake? A reflex? No, she forced her eyes shut, but the image stayed burned behind her eyelids. The man, the empty hands, the look that wasn't rage. It was shock, as if he couldn't believe she'd fired either. Jack's voice broke through. "Don't sleep, you hear me in and out, like that." His hand gripped hers tight, grounding her. Claire coughed, winced, and whispered, "Ryan." Jack glanced back toward the wreck. "I'll get him," he said, but the weight in his voice told her what she didn't want to hear. Another breath. Snow filled her mouth. She was slipping. But Jack's voice pulled her back. "Tonight is not your ending. Don't let it be." Then darkness again, but this time warmer somehow. The world came back in fragments first, the rhythmic beep of a monitor, then the sterile scent of antiseptic, and finally the heavy weight of reality pressing against Claire's chest. Hospital light burned white above her, and for a second she hoped she was still dreaming. But dreams didn't ache this deep, and they didn't come with the sound of her own heartbeat being measured by a machine. She turned her head, wincing. The room was quiet, except for the faint hum of the heater. On the nightstand, a single vase of carnations leaned toward the window, half wilted. Someone had left them there, probably out of duty, not affection. A nurse entered her shoes, whispering across the linoleum. Lieutenant Mathis Claire's voice was gravel. "Detective. Just detective." The nurse smiled politely. "Doctor says you're lucky. You had a concussion, 2 cracked ribs, and a nasty gash in your leg. Another few minutes in that wreck you might have frozen before the ambulance arrived." Claire swallowed. "What about Officer Ryan?" The nurse's pause was short, but not short enough. "I'm sorry." The words landed like a blade in her chest. She turned her face toward the window, watching flakes of snow drift lazily against the glass. Ryan. Dead. She'd been his partner for 3 years. She knew the rhythm of his coffee orders, the way he hummed Johnny Cash under his breath on night patrols. She knew his daughter was turning 7 next week, and now she'd be the one to tell his wife. Her stomach twisted. The memory of the crash replayed in jagged bursts, the screeching metal, the explosion of glass the moment before blackness when she thought she saw that suspect. Unarmed. Her pulse spiked. She wanted to sit up, but the nurse pressed her back gently. "Take it slow. You've got an appointment later this afternoon with Internal Affairs." Claire's eyes snapped open. Already, the nurse said softly. "They don't wait long when an officer discharges their weapon." By noon, Claire sat in a wheelchair, pale and stiff, rolling into a windowless conference room inside the precinct. The blinds were drawn. The air was thick with quiet judgment. The table gleamed too clean, too reflective. Across it sat 4 people, Captain Harris, chair of the Use of Force Review Board, hands clasped like a judge. Detective Rojas, Internal Affairs, with eyes sharp enough to peel skin. Union representative, a woman named Tess Mallory, all business and poker face. And Martin Keene, her attorney, gray hair, steady gaze, the kind of man who'd seen too many of these rooms. Claire felt suddenly small. The badge on her chest felt heavier than it ever had. Harris spoke first. "Detective Mathis, you understand this interview is being recorded?" "Yes, sir." Rojas leaned forward, voice smooth but predatory. "We're here to determine whether your use of force was consistent with department policy. You've been through this before in training. You know the protocol." Claire nodded once. He clicked his pen. "Walk us through the incident." Her throat tightened. She glanced at her attorney, who gave a small nod. I received a call about a black SUV matching a bolo out of Boise. She began, her voice steady but brittle. Suspect was believed armed. I pursued southbound on Route 41. My partner was with me. Rojas interrupted. You were advised not to engage. I was, she said, fighting to keep calm. But the suspect veered into civilian traffic. A minivan. I made a split-second decision to follow. Harris scribbled something. Described the suspect. Rojas pressed. Male. Caucasian. Late 30s. Wearing a dark jacket. She hesitated. I couldn't see his face clearly. Rojas's eyes flicked up, and the weapon. The question hung in the air like a loaded gun. Claire's heart thudded. The image came unbidden, the suspect standing by the tree-lined snow, swirling around him, his hands empty. Her fingers trembled under the table. Her lawyer's hand brushed her wrist, a silent reminder. Only answer what you know. I believed he was armed, she said finally. The dispatch warned us. There was a rifle in the vehicle afterward. Rojas didn't blink. But at the moment, you fired. Did you see a weapon in his hand? Claire's stomach turned. The room felt smaller. Her lips parted, but no sound came. Keene cleared his throat. My client has already submitted a preliminary report. She'll cooperate fully once the medical review confirms she's fit for a comprehensive debrief. Rojas smiled thinly. We're not asking for speculation, counselor. We're asking what she saw. Claire stared at the tabletop. The reflection of her own face looked foreign, haunted, tired, older, somehow. She thought of Ryan, his wife, his little girl. If she said she hadn't seen a gun, the DA might open a criminal inquiry. She could lose her badge, her pension, her entire identity. If she said she had, she'd be lying. A single bead of sweat rolled down her spine. I saw movement, she said at last. I perceived a threat. Silence. Then Harris nodded slowly, jotting a note. Keene's jaw tightened but said nothing. Rojas leaned back, satisfied for now. After an hour, the interview adjourned. Claire stepped into the hallway, her legs shaky. Tess Mallory, the union rep, caught her elbow gently. You did fine, Tess murmured. You said what you needed to say. That's what matters. Claire gave a bitter laugh. Is it? Tess lowered her voice. Listen, Claire. IA's not your friend. The review board's not your friend. Their job is to make sure the department doesn't take the hit. Yours is to survive this. You understand, Claire stared at her. Survive by bending the truth, by staying smart, Tess said quietly. That's what every cop who wants to keep their life learns to do. Claire wanted to argue, but the words lodged in her throat. That evening, the station corridors were nearly empty. The coffee pot had gone stale hours ago. She stopped by her locker, her reflection catching in the dented metal. Pinned inside was a photo of her and Ryan at last year's barbecue, laughing over spilled ketchup. Her hands trembled as she touched it. For a long moment she just stood there, the hum of fluorescent lights filling the silence. She thought of Rojas's voice. Did you see a weapon in his hand? The truth clawed at her ribs. Maybe she hadn't. Maybe she'd fired because her fear outran her judgment. Because she couldn't bear to lose another officer. Because her instincts, sharpened by years of chaos, made her act before logic could catch up. She slammed the locker shut. Later in the dark of her small apartment, she sat on the couch with the lights off. Her leg throbbed under the bandage. The only sound was the wind outside carrying flakes against the window like whispers. She stared at her service weapon on the table. It gleamed faintly in the moonlight, polished, perfect, indifferent. She picked it up, turning it over in her hand. This was the thing she trusted more than anyone. And now she couldn't even trust herself. Her phone buzzed. A text from the precinct IA to review supplemental footage tomorrow. DA will determine next steps. She set the phone down, heart heavy. Her eyes drifted to the corner of the room, her badge lying on the counter still flecked with snow from that night. The snow that covered everything. the snow that hid truth and guilt and fear beneath the same white silence. And for the first time in years, Claire Mathis, Detective Officer Protector, felt something she hadn't allowed herself to feel since she joined the force. Doubt. The smell of antiseptic still clung to Claire's jacket like bad memory. It had been 3 days since the hearing. 3 days since she walked out of that fluorescent-lit conference room with her badge intact but her conscience in pieces. She'd stayed silent. She'd followed the rules. And now, every time she closed her eyes, she saw that man's empty hands and Ryan's lifeless body. That morning, Sandpoint's sky was a blank canvas of cloud, the kind that threatened snow but never delivered. Claire limped into the outpatient physical therapy clinic with a dull ache pulsing in her thigh. The crash had torn muscle, and the doctor said she'd need 6 weeks before returning to full duty. She wasn't sure she'd ever feel full again. Inside the clinic, the hum of treadmills and low conversation filled the air. Nurses in pale blue scrubs guided elderly patients through careful movements. It felt oddly calming, a place where recovery was measured in inches, not interviews. And then she saw him. Jack Rowan. He stood by a small girl who was perched on a blue exercise mat, clutching a purple inhaler and trying to catch her breath between giggles. Her long auburn hair was tied back in a messy braid, and despite the wheezing, she looked up at Jack like he was the sun. "Slow it down, kiddo," he said gently, crouching beside her. "Remember what we practiced. Breathe in. Hold. Breathe out. Like blowing out candles. One at a time." She mimicked him, cheeks puffed, then burst out laughing again. Jack rolled his eyes but smiled, and for a moment Claire forgot why her heart was heavy. She watched from a distance as he helped the girl Emma she guessed stand, holding her gently under the arms. He was cautious with her but not patronizing. There was a deep tenderness in the way he adjusted her scarf, a rhythm of care that didn't come from obligation. It came from love. "Lieutenant," a voice called out behind her. She flinched. "No longer Lieutenant," she corrected reflexively. "Just Claire." The receptionist pointed toward a nearby room. "Your therapist will be with you in 5. Claire nodded and took a seat, but her eyes kept drifting back to Jack. A few minutes later he turned, and their gazes met. He paused, then walked over. "You look better, vertical," Jack said, standing beside her chair. Claire gave a dry smile. "You make a habit of pulling bleeding women out of car wrecks." He shrugged. "Just the lucky ones." A quiet beat passed. Neither of them seemed eager to fill it. "I never got to thank you," she said finally. "You were half conscious. You said plenty. Mostly curse words." Claire laughed, and for the first time in days it felt real. She glanced over at Emma. "Your daughter?" He nodded. "Emma. 8, going on 30. She's sweet. She's strong," he corrected. "Had asthma since she was 2. Her mom passed 3 years ago. Accident." Claire's smile faded. "I'm sorry." Jack nodded once, accepting the sentiment like someone who'd had to do it too many times. "You're in PT?" he asked. "Yeah, leg's still a mess. Doctor says I need time. IA says they'll wait." "Do they?" Claire hesitated. "No, they won't wait. They'll just move on without you." Jack's jaw tensed, and something flickered behind his eyes, an old wound opening. "I know how that goes," he said. "You military?" He gave a small nod. "Army, combat medic. 2 tours in Afghanistan." Claire leaned back. "Explains the battlefield triage in a blizzard." He didn't smile. "That night, I recognize something in your eyes. I've seen it before. When someone pulls the trigger but can't tell if it was out of fear or necessity." She met his gaze. "I didn't say anything about firing. You didn't have to." That afternoon, Jack stood in front of his bathroom mirror, running a razor over his jaw, eyes bloodshot from too many sleepless nights. His reflection stared back with a kind of quiet judgment he'd grown used to. The same eyes that once scanned bomb-blasted roads in Helmand Province now scanned his own soul, searching for answers he'd buried deep. He opened the medicine cabinet. Inside, beside the aspirin and allergy meds, was a small wooden box. He pulled it out, hesitated, then opened it. dog tags, a purple heart, a faded letter yellowing at the corners. He unfolded it slowly. The handwriting was formal, typed. It was the official summary from the Department of Defense about the incident. He could recite it from memory. On the morning of July 14th, Staff Sergeant Jack Rowan gave testimony regarding Sergeant Mason Kavanaugh's unauthorized use of force during a civilian engagement. As a result of Rowan's statement, Kavanaugh was court-martialed and discharged. Casualties: 1. Civilian, fatality; 2. Injuries. Rowan's testimony deemed credible and consistent with rules of engagement. He'd done the right thing. Everyone said so. But it hadn't mattered. The unit had closed ranks. Kavanaugh's friends cut him out. Jack became the rat, the man who'd snitched on his own. He hadn't seen most of them since. Some sent him death threats. One left a dead dog on his porch, all for telling the truth. He folded the letter again, slid it back into the box, and closed it. Emma was calling from the other room. "Dad, I found my snow boots." Jack closed the mirror cabinet, stared at himself one last second. "Don't screw this up," he whispered. That evening, Claire sat on her couch, ice wrapped tight around her thigh, a heating pad at her back. She scrolled through her phone, paused on a message she'd ignored 3 times already. IA request, supplemental interview. Officer involved shooting. Wednesday, 9:00 a.m. She set the phone down. Her mind raced. She thought of Jack's words when someone pulls the trigger but can't tell if it was out of fear or necessity. She'd lived by rules her entire career: policy, procedure, the chain of command. But now that chain felt like it was around her neck. Something inside her had cracked. And Jack? He was a stranger, yes, but he saw it. He saw her. Maybe that was what terrified her most, that he wasn't afraid to name the thing she wouldn't. Doubt. And somewhere inside that doubt, the seed of truth. Claire hadn't meant to cry. Not in front of anyone. Certainly not in front of Jack Rowan. But sometimes the body betrays what the mind tries to hide, and grief has a way of slipping through the cracks when no one's looking. It was late afternoon and the clinic was almost empty. She sat on a bench outside, leg wrapped in compression tape jacket pulled tight against the wind. The sun was sinking behind the trees, casting long shadows across the snow-covered parking lot. Jack had noticed her sitting there and didn't say anything at first. Just approached quietly, a thermos in one hand. "You look cold," he said. "Figured you might not have had lunch." Claire blinked. He handed her the thermos warm cider, spiced, still steaming. She took it, hesitated, then whispered, "Thanks." He sat beside her, not too close. Just enough to say, "I'm here if you need me." They watched the snow fall in silence. For a while, it was enough. Then Claire spoke, her voice brittle. "You ever have that moment where you do everything you were trained to do, every protocol, every policy, but afterward, all you can think about is what you felt?" Jack looked at her. "Yeah." She turned to face him. "And what if what you felt wasn't justice or duty or instinct, but fear?" He didn't answer right away. When he did, his voice was low. "I remember once in Helmand we were ambushed outside a compound. Smoke everywhere. Gunfire bouncing off the walls. I saw this kid, barely a teenager, running toward us. No weapon in sight, just panic in his eyes. I had a split second to decide." Claire held her breath. "I didn't fire," Jack said. "My buddy did." He paused. There was nothing on the kid. No bomb. No threat. Just fear. He died anyway. Claire looked away, throat tight. "That boy's face," Jack said. "Still wakes me up some nights." She turned back, blinking hard. "So what do you do with that?" Jack shrugged slightly. "You either bury it, or you let it shape you." Later that evening, Claire stopped by the garage Jack ran out of his converted barn. Emma was inside, sprawled on a pile of old blankets, sketching horses with a red crayon. Jack had been fixing an old carburetor when she arrived. "I won't stay long," Claire said, stepping in. "Just needed air." You picked the right place. The garage smelled of pine sawdust and motor oil. Warm, oddly comforting. A radio hummed low in the background, Springsteen's voice drifting between static. Jack wiped his hands and offered her a stool. You ever work on engines? Claire shook her head. No, but I respect anyone who can bring something broken back to life. Jack grinned faintly. Engines don't lie. If it doesn't run, there's a reason. You dig, you listen, you fix it. No politics, no blurred lines. Claire leaned forward. Must be nice. He studied her. You're not sleeping. She didn't respond. He reached for a small wooden box on the workbench and pulled out a breathing strip. Try this, he said. It's a trick they taught us in the field. Slows. Your heart stops the spiral. She gave him a look. Are you training me or diagnosing me? Maybe both, he said, smiling gently. She took the strip and followed his lead. They inhaled together, slow, deep, steady. Then exhaled. It didn't fix everything, but it slowed the noise. They did it again. And again. Hours passed. The light faded. Snow dusted the windows. Claire and Jack found themselves sitting across from one another at the small kitchenette near the back. Emma had fallen asleep on the blankets, her crayon still clutched in her hand. Claire sipped coffee. So, you testified against your own. Jack didn't flinch? Yeah, she nodded slowly. Must have been hard. It broke me, he said simply, but I couldn't let it break someone else. Claire bit her lip. I read about that case. A boy. A civilian. Didn't deserve what happened to him. She hesitated. And afterward, command shipped me home. The guys I served with most cut ties. Some called me a rat. He stared into his mug. But I sleep better knowing I didn't lie for someone who forgot what the uniform stood for. Claire looked at him, something fragile in her expression. I envy you, she whispered. I said less than the truth this week. Not a lie. But not the full picture either. Jack leaned forward, voice calm, but waited. You think truth and loyalty are supposed to live in the same house? They don't. Loyalty's about protecting people. Truth is about protecting what's right. Claire shook her head. It's not that simple. There are rules, chains of command, protocols. I'm not just a cop. I'm part of something bigger. Yeah, Jack said softly. And sometimes that something bigger crushes people when no one speaks up. His words cut through her like wind on raw skin. She stood. I should go. Jack nodded but didn't move. You're angry at me. No, she said too quickly. I'm angry at myself. Then more quietly, and maybe at you too because you did what I didn't. The next morning, Claire walked into her living room and found an envelope slipped under her door. No name, no address, just a short note. You want to know the truth. Ask who ordered the dashcam offline. Inside was a USB drive. Her heart pounded. She stared at it for a long moment, then set it aside. Too fast. Too risky. But the question lodged itself in her mind like a splinter. Who had ordered the camera system labeled corrupted, and why did someone want her to stop digging? That night, Claire lay in bed, unable to sleep. The words Jack had spoken came back to her. Imperfect truth is still better than perfect silence. She thought of Ryan, his widow, his daughter, and the man in the snow. She sat up, breath short, reached for her phone. Then, without letting herself hesitate, she typed, Jack, it's Claire. Can we talk tomorrow? I need your help. And maybe, I need to stop being afraid of the truth. The snow had stopped falling, but the cold held firm, sharp and silent like a breath half drawn and never let go. Claire sat behind the wheel of her parked car, eyes fixed on the street outside Jack's home. Her engine was off. No music, no movement. Just the distant tick-tick-tick of the cooling metal beneath the hood. She wasn't sure why she hesitated. Maybe it was the fact that she'd seen more honesty in Jack's tired eyes than she'd seen in her entire precinct over the last year. Maybe it was the fear that once she said this out loud, everything she'd been holding inside, there'd be no walking it back. But when Emma's laughter rang through the open garage door, high and clear and full of light, something inside Claire softened. She opened the door and stepped into the cold. Inside, Jack was kneeling beside a bike frame. Hands' greasy sleeves rolled a smudge of black across his cheek. Emma stood beside him in an oversized hoodie, holding a wrench twice the size of her hand. Claire knocked gently on the garage post. Emma turned first. "Claire." The girl beamed and ran toward her. Claire crouched slightly, meeting her in a soft hug. Jack stood brushing off his hands. "You showed. I said I would." He nodded, expression unreadable. "You okay?" She hesitated, then answered honestly. "Not really." Jack gestured toward the small folding table at the back, the one where they'd sat a few nights ago sipping coffee and breathing through their ghosts. Claire sat, fingers curling around the warm mug he handed her. "I got something," she said quietly. Jack raised a brow. "That USB," Claire nodded. "No sender. Just a note telling me to look into the dashcam logs." Jack leaned forward. "You think the footage from that night wasn't just corrupted by accident? I know it wasn't." Her voice had an edge now. "The internal server shows access logs someone flagged the file hours before IA marked it unreadable. Someone went in, scrubbed it, and walked away clean. And you don't know who? Not yet. But I've got someone who might." Jack tilted his head. "Old friend, works in records, owes me a favor, said he could dig deeper. Off the books. You trust him? I trust that he hates corruption more than he fears being caught." Jack gave a slow nod. "Then we start there." That night, Claire's phone buzzed twice. The message came with a photo, grainy dark shot from a distance. It was her house. The text below read, "If you want the DA to leave you alone, don't dig further." She didn't move, didn't breathe, just stared at the screen as the air around her grew still. Moments later, another ping. "Jack. You okay?" She didn't answer. She was already grabbing her coat. Jack opened the door before she knocked. One look at her face and his jaw set. "What happened?" She handed him the phone. He read. His expression darkened. "Who else knows you have the drive?" "No one," she exhaled sharply. "At least, no one I told directly." Jack walked past her into the kitchen, pulling open a drawer. Inside, a roll of security camera mounts cords and a black box marked with military surplus tags. "Time to make this place less inviting," he muttered. Claire blinked. "You had this ready, I learned. Early hope for peace. Prepare for shadows." Jack. He looked up. Emma Claire whispered, "I don't want her caught in this." Jack's jaw tightened. "Neither do I. She might be safer somewhere else just for a few days. I can help." Jack shook his head. "She's not leaving my sight, but I'll take every precaution." He opened the garage door and pointed to his old truck. "There's a compartment under the back seat. Fireproof. GPS shielded. If you're keeping that USB, it goes there." Claire didn't argue. Later, Emma sat curled on the couch with a blanket and a book, oblivious to the adults speaking in the kitchen. The soft murmur of her voice reading out loud brought a strange comfort to the shadows forming around them. Claire leaned against the counter. "There's a car that's been parked down the street for 3 nights in a row. Same model, same plates." Jack didn't ask how she knew. He just nodded, opened his laptop, and pulled up a live feed from the exterior camera he'd already mounted outside his house. "You weren't joking," she murmured. "Someone stalks my home. They become part of the record." Claire hesitated. "I saw Emma the other day. She said a man asked if her dad was home. Said it made her stomach hurt." Jack's hands stilled on the keyboard. He didn't speak for a full 10 seconds. Then he came near her. Didn't touch her. Just words. But she remembered him. Said he smelled like burnt leaves. Jack's face changed. Claire noticed. "You know that scent?" He looked up. "I do. It's pipe tobacco. And there's only one man I served with who used it. He's local. and I'm starting to wonder if he's connected to more than memory. Later that week, Claire returned home to find her front door ajar. Her weapon was out in seconds, heartbeat thundering. She swept the apartment, cleared each room. Nothing taken, nothing touched, except one thing. A single photograph on her fridge, her and Ryan at a precinct holiday party, had been flipped upside down. No message, no noise. Just a reminder. We can reach you, even here. She sat down on the edge of her couch, hand trembling. Not from fear, exactly. From the violation of it all. Her phone buzzed. Another message. Untraceable number. Do you want to be the hero? Or do you want to stay alive? That night she returned to Jack's adrenaline still riding high. He opened the door before she knocked. You're staying here tonight. It wasn't a question. Claire nodded, once silent. He pulled her inside, closed the door, and locked every bolt. After Emma went to bed, they sat together in the quiet kitchen, light from the stovetop casting soft halos across the room. Claire wrapped her hands around a mug of tea. I don't know who to trust anymore. Jack looked down. Trust is earned, not inherited. You think I'm still trying to protect the system? I think you're still deciding if you're part of it, or if it's part of you. She looked up sharply. You don't pull punches, do you? I don't have the time. Claire stared at him for a long moment. Then softly, do you believe it's worth it? Jack didn't ask what it was. He already knew. Truth doesn't always win, he said. But when it does, it saves more than just reputations. It saves people. Like Emma. Like you. Claire looked down at her lap, then back at him. I think someone inside the department is trying to bury this. And I think we just became the last people willing to stop them. Jack nodded once. Then we do it together. It started with a photograph. Emma, curious as always, had wandered out back while Claire and Jack finished mounting the last security camera on the porch. She held up her toy camera, a beat-up plastic thing with a cracked viewfinder and a broken flash, and proudly announced she was taking pictures for her detective agency. Jack chuckled. Be careful out there, Agent Rowan. I'm watching everything Emma said with a salute, then ran off toward the tree line. Neither Jack nor Claire thought much of it until Emma returned with wide eyes and a photo already printed from the camera's tiny internal printer. Daddy, she whispered, holding it up. That man was watching. I saw him near the road. Claire took the print. It was grainy, the angle tilted, but the silhouette was unmistakable. The man stood at a distance half obscured by the trees wearing a hooded coat, and even in shadow, Claire felt her stomach drop. Jack snatched the photo jaw, clenching. That's Rieger. Claire looked up sharply. You're sure? Too sure. His voice darkened. Tom Rieger. Used to be a cop. One of ours. Until Internal Affairs forced him out. She exhaled slowly. The name was familiar. Too familiar. He worked narcotics, she said. Got caught in an evidence scandal. Claimed it was all a setup. Department buried it. Because he knew too much, Jack added. Or at least that's what he believed. Claire looked down at the image again. Why would he be watching you? Jack didn't answer. Not immediately. He stood, walked to the garage, and returned with an old cardboard box. Dust clung to the lid like regret. I kept a few files, he said. Things from when I was trying to connect dots the department didn't want me looking at. He dropped the box onto the table. It landed with a soft thud. Inside were clippings, old printed reports, handwritten notes, pieces of a puzzle Rieger had once been part of. Claire pulled out one file, flipping through pages marked with highlighter and coffee stains. It was a mess, but the story it told crystal clear. Rieger had been tailing suspects tied to a cartel, she murmured. But somewhere along the line the case was pulled from him. Officially, because of misconduct, but Jack pointed to a document. Unofficially, because he got too close to someone higher up, someone feeding info to the wrong side. Claire blinked. Bennett. Jack nodded grimly. He was a rising star, Claire said, thinking out loud. Always clean on paper, but he had the access. The pull. And now he has motive, Jack said. If Rieger is back and Bennett's still in play, this isn't just about a bad shoot. This is about tying off loose ends. Claire closed the file. Emma may have just photographed the man who started it all. Later that evening, Claire sat alone in Jack's spare room, her laptop open, the USB drive finally plugged in. The air around her felt heavier now, like the moment before a thunderstorm breaks open. The folder on the drive was labeled Shielded. Inside a copy of the dashcam log. And something else. A video file. She clicked it. Static. Then the image stabilized, grainy black and white, but unmistakable. It was her cruiser. Her voice coming through the mic. Ryan's too. Then the crash. Then silence. And then the suspect. Standing just outside the frame. Arms raised, no weapon. Claire felt the blood drain from her face. The timestamp matched. This was after the impact. After she fired. Her breath caught. She had pulled the trigger believing the man was armed. But the footage didn't lie. He wasn't. The sick truth settled like ice in her chest. She hadn't just doubted herself anymore. Now she knew. She heard Jack's footsteps behind her. She didn't look up. "You watched it," he said. Not a question. Claire nodded, eyes still on the screen. "You were wrong," he said softly. Tears welled in her eyes but didn't fall. "I was wrong," she whispered. Jack sat beside her. "You weren't reckless. You were scared. But that doesn't mean there aren't consequences." "I killed a man," Claire said. "He wasn't even pointing a gun. I took a shot based on a maybe." Jack paused. "You acted on years of conditioning. On the fear that not pulling the trigger would mean you wouldn't come home. That's the system's failure, not yours alone." Claire looked at him. "But I didn't tell the whole truth. At IA, I let them believe he was armed." Jack nodded slowly. "Then the question now is, what are you going to do with the truth you have now?" The next morning, Claire arranged to meet someone she never thought she'd call again, Lieutenant Bennett. They met in a quiet diner on the edge of town, far from the eyes and ears of the precinct. Bennett looked tired, paler than usual. His hands shook slightly as he stirred his coffee. Claire slid a manila envelope across the table. "Recognize that man." He glanced at the photo. His face stiffened. "That's Rieger," he muttered. "Didn't think he was still around." "He is," Claire said. "He's been watching me. And Jack. And my guess, he never left the game. Just went underground." Bennett said nothing. Claire leaned in. "He's the one who set up the drug run that night. The one I intercepted. The one where I killed a man who didn't have a gun." Bennett's eyes narrowed. "What do you want from me?" "The truth," Claire said. "Not the official report. Not the story you were told to push. I want the real version." Bennett looked around the diner, then exhaled. "Rieger saved my life once. Years ago. I owed him. I still owe him." Claire's voice lowered. "And how far does that debt go?" He didn't answer. But his silence was loud. "Did you help him wipe the dash cam?" she asked. Bennett looked up. His eyes were wet. "My kid's been in and out of hospitals. We're drowning in bills. Rieger said he could help. Said he just needed the footage gone. I didn't ask why. I didn't want to know." Claire's heart broke not in sympathy but in frustration. "You don't get to buy peace with silence," she said. "Not when people are dying." Bennett leaned back. "You're not recording this, no? Then consider this off the record. If you want to blow this open, you better be ready to burn with it." Claire stood. "I'm already on fire." That night, back at Jack's, she watched Emma draw stars on construction paper with a gold marker. The house was quiet, but not empty. Safe, but not untouched. Jack sat beside her on the couch. "Bennett's in it deep," she said. "But I think part of him wants out." Jack nodded. Rieger's still holding something over him. Claire whispered, "We need to find out what." Fast. She looked down at the photo Emma had taken. The blurred figure of Rieger in the trees. Then she looked at the girl so small, so unaware of the world she'd stumbled into. And Claire knew this wasn't just about clearing her name anymore. It was about protecting the future. For Emma. For Jack. And maybe for herself, too. The soft click of the flash drive sliding into Jack's laptop echoed louder than it should have in the quiet of the garage. Claire stood behind him, arms folded, tension wound tight in her shoulders as the screen flickered to life. Lines of code streamed across the screen, followed by a red message: file directory corrupted. Access denied. Jack frowned, his fingers already moving. They didn't just delete the footage. They buried it. Claire leaned closer. Can you get it back? Jack didn't look up. Maybe. Depends how deep they went. And how stupid they were. He opened a second window running software Claire didn't recognize, a mix of military-grade forensic tools and open-source patches cobbled together with the kind of precision only someone who'd lived through war and tech blackouts would know how to use. "Do I want to ask where you got this?" she asked. Jack smirked. "No, but let's just say there are still a few people out there who owe me favors. One of them used to clean up drone footage for the Army's legal office. If anyone can bring a ghost file back to life, it's him." Claire nodded slowly. "You trust him. I trust that he hates silence more than he fears exposure." Jack clicked again. "This'll take hours. Maybe all night." Claire looked over at the small couch by the garage wall. "Then we wait." The hours passed quietly. The wind picked up outside, howling through the seams of the barn like a warning. Jack sat in front of the screen, eyes unblinking. Claire paced. Every now and then she'd check on Emma, who'd fallen asleep curled up in a blanket fort she built with Jack's old army cots and a string of holiday lights. At 2:17 a.m., Jack suddenly sat upright. "There," he whispered. Claire moved fast, crouching beside him. The video was choppy, still damaged, but it played. Dashcam footage, her patrol car, the snow, the chase, her own voice over the radio, calm, composed, doing her job. Then the swerve, the flash of headlights, Ryan's warning shout, then the impact. Metal crunched, the frame shook, and then the man, standing by the passenger side door of the SUV, hands clearly raised. No weapon. Claire's breath caught. It was exactly as she remembered, but this time it was real, documented. Then came the strangest part, a flicker on the screen. Not from the crash, but from after. Another figure appeared, just for a second, moving quickly toward the cruiser. Claire hit pause. Back that up. Jack did, frame by frame. The shadow stepped toward the passenger side of her patrol car. It wasn't Ryan, it wasn't the suspect, and it wasn't Claire. A third man, heavy set. Hood pulled low. Familiar gait. Jack froze the screen and enhanced the frame as much as the damage would allow. Claire whispered, "That's Rieger." The man had been there. Not just watching, intervening. Claire sat back, cold sweat rising along her spine. He was there when Ryan was still alive. Jack didn't speak. Claire stood pacing now. He didn't just orchestrate the drug run. He was at the crash site. Maybe he wiped the scene. Maybe he... She trailed off. Jack finished the thought. Maybe he made sure no one else survived. Claire's mind raced. "We have to bring this to IA. To the DA. This changes everything." Jack shook his head slowly. "Not yet." She turned, stunned. "What?" He looked up at her, calm but resolute. "You go to IA now, they'll bury it. Or they'll flip it against you, say you tampered, say it's stolen evidence. It wasn't recovered through chain of custody. They'll say it's inadmissible." Claire gritted her teeth. "So, we sit on it." "No. We build around it." He pulled a pad of paper toward him. "This file is the thread. We pull it carefully, one lead at a time." Claire shook her head. "You really think we can unravel all of this? I think Jack said that if we don't, Rieger wins. And the next, Claire Mathis doesn't walk away." Later that morning, Claire met with her lawyer, Martin Keene, at a quiet cafe out of town. No precinct eyes, No IA bugs. She showed him the footage. He didn't say a word until the video ended. Then, with a long breath, "You know what this means." "I do," Claire said. "It's not just about clearing your name anymore. This opens a criminal conspiracy investigation. Tampering, obstruction, maybe even accessory to manslaughter if Rager's presence at the scene is connected to Ryan's death." Claire nodded. "But none of that sticks unless we move carefully." Keene leaned in. "How'd you recover this off the record?" He didn't press, just sighed. "You're walking a tightrope, Claire. This could save you, or it could ruin you." "I'm already ruined," she said. "But this might be how I get clean." Back at Jack's, Emma was outside playing with her toy camera again, bundled tight against the cold. Claire stood beside Jack at the edge of the porch watching her twirl in the snow. "Funny, isn't it?" she said softly. "What is?" She saw him first. Caught him, not with a badge or a gun, just by paying attention. Jack smiled faintly. Sometimes that's all justice really is, paying attention when others look away. Claire looked over at him. "I need your help with something else. Name it. I want to trace the internal log that marked the dashcam file as corrupted. I need to know who did it, not just that it was done." Jack nodded. "I'll call Marcus. He used to work back-end systems for the city. If anyone can ghost trace a deletion, it's him." Claire exhaled. "Good. Because I'm not stopping." Jack looked at her. And for the first time since they met, he didn't see the weight she was carrying. He saw the strength beneath it. That night, she returned to her apartment alone for the first time in days, and she wasn't there 5 minutes before she knew something was off. The door was locked. The lights were exactly as she left them, but her boots by the door had been moved. Slightly. Just enough. She stepped inside, carefully weapon drawn. Room by room. Nothing touched, nothing stolen, until she reached her bedroom. There on her pillow was a Polaroid photo. Emma, on the porch, laughing, taken from behind a tree. Claire's stomach dropped. On the back of the photo, written in shaky red marker, "You're looking too closely." She didn't call Jack. She just drove. Snow on the roads, her tires slipping. She parked and ran to the door, not bothering to knock. Jack opened it with a look that said he already knew. She handed him the photo. He stared at it, then went still. "She's not safe here," Claire whispered. Jack nodded. "We'll go. Tonight. Where a place Rieger doesn't know exists. Off-grid. Belong to a friend. He won't find us." Claire looked up at him, heart thudding. "We bring the footage. We bring everything." Jack nodded once, and in the silence that followed, one truth echoed louder than any threat: they weren't just witnesses anymore. They were targets. The old service road wound through the woods like a scar, barely lit, barely plowed, the kind of place no one stumbled into by accident. Jack's truck rumbled slowly, headlights carving twin beams through the snow-laced pines. Claire sat in the passenger seat, her eyes on the rearview mirror, watching for shadows. In the back, Emma slept tucked under 2 fleece blankets, the rise and fall of her small chest, the only thing anchoring Claire's spinning thoughts. They were headed to a cabin Jack hadn't seen in years, a safe house once owned by an army buddy who'd long since disappeared from public view. No address, no phone lines, just a potbelly stove, a backup generator, and a wood-burning silence no one could hack. It was exactly what they needed. Exactly what Claire hated. Too quiet. Too far. Too much time to think. By morning, the stove had turned the single-room cabin into a pocket of warmth, humming with the scent of firewood and instant coffee. Claire stepped outside into the snow-drenched silence boots, crunching the frost-hardened ground. Her breath fogged the air. In the distance, birds called from the tree line, their song sharp and strange in the cold. Jack joined her a few minutes later, a steaming mug in each hand. "No signal," he said, handing her one. "Good," she replied, then paused. "And bad." He raised a brow. "I got used to noise, distraction. Makes it easier not to hear yourself think." Jack took a sip. And now I'm thinking too clearly. She stared ahead into the white blur of pines. I'm not just in this because of a bad shot anymore, she said. I'm in this because the system I spent my life protecting doesn't want to protect me back. Jack nodded. You said you wanted to stop being afraid of the truth. Claire glanced over. What if I'm still afraid? But I'm tired of pretending I'm not. Jack didn't answer. He didn't need to. That afternoon, Claire made the call. Using a secure satellite line Jack rigged from the back of the truck, she contacted Lieutenant Bennett. No recording, no GPS tag. Just static and breath and a long pause when he picked up. You shouldn't be calling me, Bennett said. You're the one person still standing on the line, Claire replied, and I think you hate the silence almost as much as I do. Bennett didn't respond. Claire pushed. I know about the footage. I know Rieger was there that night. I know you helped cover it. Still nothing. She took a breath. But I also know you tried to soften the report. You made it so I didn't get crucified. You made me the shooter, but not a murderer. Silence again. Then softly, I didn't want to bury you. Claire's grip tightened around the phone. Then help me dig. Bennett's voice cracked. You think this is simple, that I can just flip the switch and come clean. You have no idea what Rieger has on me. Then tell me. Silence stretched long enough that she thought he'd hung up. Finally, broken brittle. My son. Rieger knew about the clinic bills, the second mortgage. He said he had friends who could ease the load. I was drowning Claire. Claire closed her eyes. And then the footage went missing, she said. I didn't delete it, Bennett said quickly. I just looked the other way. Rieger took care of the rest. You knew he was using me to tie up loose ends. I didn't know until it was too late. Claire swallowed. It's not too late now. Bennett laughed bitter and small. You're still young enough to believe that. She kept her voice steady. Help me, and I'll make sure your son keeps his father. Maybe not the badge, but the man. A long pause. Then, meet me tomorrow. Industrial lot off Jefferson and 9th. I'll bring what I have. After that, I'm out. The line went dead. Claire lowered the phone. Jack stepped out of the cabin watching her. Well, he's ready to talk. Jack studied her. And you believe him? Claire nodded. I think he wants a way out, even if he's too ashamed to say it out loud. That night, Claire stood by the cabin window watching Emma sleep beside the stove, her breath-steady cheeks flushed with heat. Jack joined her, wrapping a blanket around her shoulders. Do you ever wonder if we're just moving in circles? She asked. Jack raised a brow. Like we think we're breaking the pattern, she continued, but really, we're just dancing inside it. He looked at Emma, then back at Claire. No, he said, because we're not doing this just for us. Claire looked up. We're not trying to erase the past, Jack said. We're trying to make sure it doesn't bleed into the future. She nodded slowly. I keep thinking about Ryan. What he'd say if he saw where this all ended up. Jack didn't answer for a moment. Then he'd probably say the same thing I'm about to say. Claire tilted her head, which is, don't wait for the right time to do the right thing. Just do it, and deal with the rest later. The next day, Claire drove alone. Jack wanted to come, but she insisted. This has to be me, she said. Bennett won't talk if he thinks you're part of some sting. She met Bennett at the lot, a rusted shell of a scrapyard long since abandoned, tucked behind rows of silent warehouses. He stepped out of his truck slowly, a folder in his hand. His eyes looked heavier than before. His skin was gray under the morning light. Claire approached cautiously. You came, he said. So did you. He handed her the folder. Inside were internal memos, email printouts, security access logs, evidence Rieger had been inside the server room the day the footage was erased. One document had Bennett's initials at the bottom. I signed that, he said. Told IA it was a system failure. I knew it wasn't, but I signed anyway. Claire looked up at him. "Why now?" "Because I saw the photo," he said. "Of Emma? On your pillow." Claire froze. "I knew that was Rieger. He's not just tying loose ends. He's sending messages. He's playing God." Claire's heart pounded. "And you don't want to be part of that anymore." "I never did. But I stopped saying that out loud." She nodded. "It's not too late to start." But just as she turned to go, a shot cracked the air. Bennett staggered. Claire dropped to her knees, pulling him behind the nearest metal drum, blood already soaking through his coat. "No, no, stay with me," she whispered. But his eyes were already glassing over. He clutched her hand. "Make it matter," he rasped. "Promise me, make it matter." Then, stillness. Claire looked toward the warehouse rooftops. A shadow moved, and was gone. Back at the cabin, Jack listened as Claire recounted everything, her voice raw, trembling. She handed him the blood-stained folder. "He died trying to do the right thing," she said. "Now we finish it." Jack nodded, jaw tight. "We bring this to the DA. No more waiting." Claire looked over at Emma asleep once more, and she made a silent vow, no matter how deep this went, no matter who got exposed, they would not be silenced. Not this time. The world narrowed to sirens and snow. Amber Alert, Emma Rowan, 8 years old, last seen near County Road 32. Claire stared at the bulletin on her phone, her pulse drowning out every sound. The photo on the screen. Emma's smile, her eyes wide with curiosity, hit like a punch to the chest. She was gone. It had taken less than 3 minutes. Claire had stepped into the cabin kitchen to take a call from the district attorney's office. Jack had gone outside to chop more firewood. The front door had been unlocked for less than 60 seconds. And Emma was gone. Now, every second felt like glass breaking. Jack's face was stone as he stood on the porch, hands-clenched eyes sweeping the tree line like a soldier in a kill zone. But Claire saw the panic rising in him beneath the surface. It was tidal. "They knew where we were," he said, a voice low and hollow. "This place wasn't as off-grid as I thought." Claire tapped the GPS tracker app she'd installed 2 nights ago. It was Jack's idea. A failsafe. Just in case. The blinking dot appeared. Moving. Eastbound. Fast. "She still has the bracelet," Claire whispered. "They haven't found it." Jack grabbed his keys. "We're going after her." "You can't," Claire said, blocking the path. "IA thinks you're involved in the server breach. If you show up at that location, they'll arrest you or worse. They'll assume you're armed and hostile." Jack's face darkened. "And you think I care?" Claire stepped closer. "I do, and so does Emma. She needs both of us to survive this." His jaw flexed fury, shaking beneath his skin. But then his eyes dropped. He nodded. "Then we do this your way." Claire called it in anonymously using an old burner phone. She gave the coordinates, claimed to be a hiker who saw a child being pulled into a van. Within minutes, dispatch confirmed law enforcement was en route. Then she turned to Jack. "We follow. Quietly. Close enough to intervene, but far enough to stay invisible." Jack was already loading the truck. The old military instincts in him were surfacing now. He wasn't panicked. He was surgical. But Claire saw something else in his eyes. A flicker of something she hadn't seen since the crash. Guilt, and she understood why. The drive was silent but charged like a live wire stretched across miles of frozen highway. Claire kept one eye on the GPS dot, now slowing near the edge of an abandoned warehouse district, industrial grounds once used by logging companies, now rusted and forgotten. The same area where Bennett had died. Jack's hands gripped the steering wheel like he was holding the world together. "I should have seen this coming," he said at last. "Rieger doesn't go after systems. He goes after the people who believe in them." Claire looked at him. "You testified once, Jack, and they made you pay for telling the truth." "I lived," he said, "but I stopped trusting the idea that truth wins. I stopped trying." Claire's voice was soft. "Until now." He met her eyes. "Because of you. Because of her." They parked 3 blocks away in a blind spot behind a snow-covered loading dock. Claire tucked her badge into her coat. Her weapon was holstered but ready. Jack checked the small sidearm he kept for emergencies. They moved together, slipping through alleys and shattered fences until the warehouse came into view, massive, looming its windows blacked out and broken. Inside, dim light flickered behind one steel door. Claire lifted her hand, paused, listened. A child's cry. Faint, but real. Emma. They didn't wait. Jack kicked the door open with a grunt and they swept in fast. Claire saw the man first. Tom Rieger. Older now, scarred. A man who wore his bitterness like armor. He was standing near a chair where Emma sat duct-taped and trembling, her cheeks stained with tears. Rieger spun toward them, pistol raised. "Don't," Claire barked, gun leveled. "Don't make her watch you die." For a moment, no one moved. Then Rieger laughed. Low, broken. "You think you're the good guys," he said. "You don't even know how deep this goes." "I know enough," Claire replied. "Bennett died because of you." Rieger's eyes flared. "Bennett was a coward. He sold me out years ago to keep his pension, just like the rest of them." Jack stepped forward. "You're the one who burned it all down. You betrayed every oath you ever took." Rieger turned his gaze to him. "You, the medic who played hero in the courtroom. You think the world got better because you opened your mouth." He motioned toward Emma with his gun. "That girl's in this mess because of you. You started talking again." Claire felt Jack stiffen beside her. "I let your partner die," Rieger said softly. "And I'd do it again." That was it. Jack fired first. The bullet struck Rieger in the shoulder, spinning him. His weapon clattered to the floor. Claire rushed forward, tackled him before he could recover, pinned him down. Emma sobbed as Jack cut the tape around her wrists and scooped her into his arms. "It's okay," he whispered over and over, voice shaking. "I've got you. I've got you." Police arrived minutes later. Claire handed over her badge, the footage, and a full statement. Rieger was taken into custody alive, bleeding, ranting about betrayals and justice and rot that went higher than anyone dared admit. But this time, the system couldn't look away. They had video. They had files. They had the body count. And most of all, they had witnesses who refused to be silent anymore. 2 days later, Claire stood before the district attorney in a small office with peeling paint and no ceremony. The DA, a woman named Rachel Garvey, watched her quietly. This footage, Garvey said, tapping the flash drive, was obtained illegally. "I know, and it was stored outside proper chain of custody. I know that too. But it led to the arrest of an ex-officer tied to multiple deaths, drug trafficking, and systemic evidence tampering. It cracked open 6 sealed files." Claire met her eyes. So Garvey said, leaning forward, "I'm choosing to treat it as a lead, not a verdict. We'll open a formal investigation. We'll subpoena the rest." Claire's breath caught. "You're not charging me, I should," Garvey said. "But I won't, because I'd rather make the rot answer for what it's done, not the ones trying to clean it up." That night, Claire returned to the cabin. Emma was asleep on the couch holding a stuffed rabbit someone at the station had given her. Jack stood by the fireplace, staring into the flames. "You didn't kill him," Claire said quietly. Jack didn't look at her. "I almost did. But you didn't." He turned. His face was tired, hollowed. "I wanted to end him," Jack admitted. "But when I saw her face, what it would do to her, I couldn't pull the trigger." Claire stepped closer. "That's what makes you different," she said. "You stopped the cycle." He looked down at the flames again. "I hope it's enough." She touched his hand. "It will be." Outside, the snow began to fall again. Soft, clean, like the beginning of something new. The courtroom wasn't large. No grand marble columns, no sweeping arches or polished mahogany. Just soft yellow lights buzzing faintly overhead and walls the color of old paper. It smelled like dust and quiet. But for Claire, it might as well have been a battlefield. The witness chair sat under a single overhead bulb, casting a pool of light that felt surgical. Precise. Inescapable. It was time. She adjusted the collar of her blazer heart, steady but not still. Behind her, Jack sat quietly beside Emma, whose legs swung slightly from the too-big bench her little hand clutched around her stuffed rabbit. Claire didn't look back again. She couldn't afford to. Not now. The clerk called her name. She stood, walked forward, and sat beneath the light. The assistant district attorney, a woman named Lena Ortiz, rose from her table. Her presence was calm but sharp, like a blade that had been sheathed for too long. Detective Claire Matisse, she began, "Thank you for appearing today. Let the record show this testimony is part of the use of force review and the grand jury inquiry into officer-involved conduct on the night of January 4th, as well as potential evidence suppression and departmental misconduct." Claire nodded once. Understood. Ortiz stepped closer. "Let's begin at the point of contact, the pursuit." Claire took a breath. Her voice came steady. "I was following a black SUV tied to an active narcotics investigation. Dispatch confirmed the suspect was potentially armed and dangerous. And during this pursuit—" What changed? Claire's fingers curled slightly on the wooden arms of the chair. The vehicle veered. There was an almost collision with a civilian minivan. I lost visual for a moment, then regained it on a service road. "Did the suspect fire at you at any point?" Numbered Ortiz leaned forward. "Did you see a weapon?" Claire paused. The silence in the room stretched just long enough for truth to take root. "No," she said. "I didn't. I assumed. I reacted. And after the crash, I exited the vehicle. I approached the SUV. I made a decision in the chaos." Her voice dipped. "And it was the wrong one." Ortiz's tone softened, but only slightly. "And the dashcam footage," Claire straightened. "It was recovered outside the chain of custody, but it clearly shows the suspect unarmed. Furthermore, it shows a second figure, Tom Rieger, approaching the scene, suggesting manipulation of evidence and involvement in subsequent cover-up efforts." The room shifted, jaws tensed, pencils scratched. Ortiz nodded. "And who erased that footage, I can't say definitively. But I have documentation that Lieutenant Bennett was pressured to sign off on a corruption notice, logged after hours. Evidence suggests Rieger used personal leverage to orchestrate the deletion." "And what did you do with that information?" Claire exhaled. "I broke protocol. I pursued the truth outside the system that was supposed to protect it." Ortiz studied her for a long moment. And why Claire looked toward the light, then beyond it, imagining the countless faces who might one day hear this officer's victims, survivors, doubters. Because silence didn't save anyone. Not Ryan, not Bennett, not me. And it sure as hell wouldn't save Emma. After Ortiz stepped back, the room waited. Seconds passed. Then a second chair scraped quietly across the floor. Jack stood. The defense team stirred, whispering, unsure if this was procedure. But Ortiz raised a hand. "Your Honor, with the court's permission, Mr. Jack Rowan will provide witness corroboration." The judge, an older man with tired eyes and no appetite for bureaucracy, nodded once. "Proceed." Jack approached the chair beside Claire's. He wore no badge, no uniform, just a plain shirt sleeves rolled. A scar visible along his forearm, a story unspoken. "State your name for the record," Ortiz said. "Jack Rowan," he replied. "Occupation?" "I'm a mechanic, former Army medic." Ortiz folded her hands. "Mr. Rowan, were you present the night of the incident?" "Yes." "Did you witness the shooting?" "I arrived moments after," Jack said. Pulled Claire out of the wreck, stabilized her leg. "Did you see the suspect alive?" "Yes." Ortiz's tone sharpened. "Did you see a weapon in his possession?" "No." His voice didn't waver. He was unarmed. "And did you see a second individual later identified as Tom Rieger at the scene?" Jack nodded. "Yes. He wasn't there to help." "What did you do next?" Jack paused. I stayed quiet. He looked down, then back up. Because the last time I told the truth, it cost me everything. My career, my unit, my peace. Ortiz let the silence linger. And why are you speaking now? Jack's voice softened. Because truth only matters when you're willing to bleed for it. The hearing recessed. Claire stepped into the hallway, her breath ragged. Jack followed his steps, echoing behind hers. She turned toward him, emotion rising like a wave. You didn't have to do that, she said. Jack gave a tired smile. Yes. I did. You were already on their radar. I've been on someone's radar my whole damn life. He looked at her. At least this time it's for something that matters. Claire swallowed. You said it cost you everything last time. It did. And now Jack looked down the corridor where Emma waited with the social worker spinning in slow circles with her bunny in hand. Now, he said, I have something worth protecting. Claire followed his gaze, her throat tight. So do I. The DA's office moved fast. The next morning, Claire sat in a private meeting with ADA Ortiz and a federal liaison flown in from the Department of Justice. The case had become too big, crossing into federal jurisdiction, with the exposure of interstate trafficking evidence tampering and internal corruption. We'll need everything the liaison said, the video, the documents, every handwritten note, and we'll need your statement sworn signed and ready for court. Claire nodded. You'll get it. Ortiz leaned forward. But there's one condition. Claire tensed. Ortiz glanced at the DOJ rep, then back to Claire. We want you to come in as a consultant, temporary but formal. You'd serve as liaison for officer conduct and whistleblower protection. Claire blinked. You want me back? And Ortiz smiled. No badge, no gun. Just your voice. We think you've earned the right to use it. Claire sat back, silent, processing. For the first time in weeks, her hands stopped shaking. That night, Jack and Claire stood on the porch of the cabin. The stars were out, clean bright, unburdened. I got offered a job, she said. Jack raised a brow. The kind that pays. The kind that changes things, Claire replied. He nodded slowly. You taking it? She looked up at the sky, then back at him. I think I owe it to Ryan, and to every cop still scared to speak. He stepped closer. And to yourself. Claire smiled, small and real. Yeah, that too. From inside the cabin, Emma's laughter rang out light as wind chimes. It wrapped around them both, softening everything. Jack reached into his coat pocket and pulled something out. A small wooden box. Simple, unvarnished, hand-carved. He opened it. Inside a ring. A band of warm cedar inlaid with a single strand of silver. I made it from the truck that saved your life, he said quietly. Thought maybe. It could help rebuild it, too. Claire looked at him, breath-catching. Jack held her gaze. You don't have to say yes now, he said. But I'm not going anywhere. Not this time. Claire took the ring, her fingers trembling. You already stayed longer than anyone else ever has, she whispered. He smiled. That's the plan. The house was quiet. Not the tense silence that holds its breath before a storm, but a gentle settled hush, the kind that wraps around you like a worn flannel blanket after the longest day. The kind that says you're safe now. Claire stood by the kitchen window, a mug of coffee warming her hands. Outside, the early morning sun painted soft gold across the pine trees. Snow still clung to the tips of the branches, but the melt had begun. You could hear it in the steady drip from the roof, in the ground slowly coming back to life. Spring was near, and this time she'd be around to see it. She looked over her shoulder at the living room. Jack was on the couch, still asleep, arms slung protectively across Emma, who had curled up against his chest sometime in the night. Her bunny lay between them, one ear folded, one paw dangling. Claire smiled. It had been 3 months since the hearing. 3 months since the truth, long buried and bleeding, finally stood up in the light and said enough. The fallout had come swiftly. Rieger's arrest had led to a dozen more. 3 precincts were now under federal review. 2 assistant chiefs had resigned. A long list of names was still unraveling, some guilty of silence, others of action. It wasn't clean, it wasn't fast, but it was real. And for the first time in years, Claire felt something she'd nearly forgotten. Hope. Later that morning, Claire stood in front of the old barn behind the cabin, now repurposed into something between a workshop and a dream. Inside, blueprints lined the far wall. A few half-built wooden chairs sat in one corner. Tools neatly arranged on a bench. Jack's handiwork was everywhere tidy, efficient, quiet. But today it was Claire's turn. She'd spread out folders across a broad oak table, proposals, case studies, field notes. The Whistleblower Liaison Unit, newly formed, federally backed, was launching its pilot program in 6 cities. And Claire had just been asked to lead the first. It wasn't a badge, but it was justice. In another life, she might have laughed at the idea. Claire Matisse, former IA, teaching courage to cops who'd never been taught how to speak without fear. She would have said no one would listen. But now she had a proof that the truth could not only survive, but grow. That afternoon, Jack grilled lunch on the porch while Emma decorated the fence with sidewalk chalk drawing stick figures with oversized smiles and trees that looked like lollipops. "She wants to plant a garden," Jack said, flipping a burger. "I told her dirt isn't edible, but she said I just don't have imagination." Claire chuckled. "She's not wrong." They sat down on the steps with paper plates in their laps, watching the clouds drift like lazy thoughts across the sky. "I used to think healing meant forgetting," Claire said after a while. Jack looked at her. "And now," she exhaled. "Now I think it means carrying the weight differently. Not letting it crush you, but letting it remind you why you stand taller." He nodded, his eyes gentle. "The scars don't disappear, but they can become part of something stronger." She glanced at him. "You always talk like that. Only when I'm terrified of how much I love someone." Her breath caught. He smiled, soft and steady. Claire didn't answer, not with words. She leaned her head against his shoulder, and for a while neither of them spoke. They just listened to Emma humming off-key in the background, the birds trading secrets overhead, and the wind making music through the trees. 2 weeks later, Claire stood behind a podium in a modest City Hall auditorium facing a room filled with people who had seen too much and said too little for far too long. Her first seminar: officers, dispatchers, prosecutors, internals. Some sat stiffly, arms crossed, jaws clenched. Others looked cautiously hopeful, like kids peeking through a cracked door, unsure if the room beyond was safe to enter. Claire didn't waste time. She started with her story. Not the sanitized version, the truth. She told them about the chase, the mistake, the footage, the fear, the fury, the lies, the loss. She told them about Bennett, and then she told them what she did anyway. By the end, the room was silent, not in judgment, but in something that felt like reverence. "You don't have to be perfect to be brave," she said quietly. "You just have to decide that the truth is worth more than your comfort, worth more than your silence, worth more than your fear." She paused. "And when you do, you'll find you're not alone." One by one, hands started to rise. The conversation had begun. That night, Claire came home to find the porch lit with lanterns and a handwritten note taped to the door, "Backyard. Wear boots." She changed, then stepped outside. The backyard had been transformed. Mason jars filled with candles lined the path. At the end stood Jack, dressed in jeans and a collared shirt, his hands in his pockets, eyes brighter than she'd ever seen them. He didn't speak right away. Just walked toward her, took her hand. "I don't have a church," he said, "or a minister, or a ring I didn't carve out of a Chevy tailgate." Claire smiled. "But I have a heart that knows what it wants," he continued. "I have a little girl who calls you her safe place, and I have a second chance I never thought I'd get." He dropped to one knee, not dramatic, not rehearsed, just steady. "So I'm asking," he said. "Not for perfection, not for promises we can't keep, just for the chance to keep choosing you, every day, again and again. Claire stared down at him, heart full. Then she knelt too and whispered yes. They married under the trees the next weekend. Small ceremony, no frills. Emma wore a crown made of daisies and handed out juice boxes like party favors. When Claire walked down the aisle just a few wooden steps, really she didn't carry flowers. She carried a folded copy of her resignation letter from Internal Affairs, the one she never sent, because now she didn't have to leave the system to change it. She just had to stand inside it with both feet and both fists full of truth. Weeks passed. The cabin became home. The fence got painted badly thanks to Emma's help. The garden bloomed against all odds. Carrots were planted too close together. Tomatoes ran wild. But they laughed. They lived. Claire still had hard days. There were headlines that made her sick, emails that made her fists clench, mornings where the shadows tried to crawl back in. But now she didn't face them alone. Jack stood with her. Emma ran toward her. And inside herself, Claire had finally built something unshakable. One night, as the stars blinked open and the trees hummed their lullaby, Claire sat with Jack on the porch swing wrapped in an old quilt. Emma was already asleep inside, curled up with her bunny now missing one eye and half its tail. Claire leaned her head on Jack's shoulder. "Do you ever think," she murmured, "we're allowed to have peace?" After everything, Jack took a breath slow and deep. "I think," he said, "peace isn't what you get when it's all over. I think peace is what you build one small choice at a time." He kissed her forehead. "And I think you're the bravest damn builder I've ever met." Claire smiled, not because everything was perfect, but because everything was honest. And for the first time in a very long time, that was enough. Sometimes healing doesn't come like a thunderclap. It arrives in small choices, spoken truths, quiet courage, and the people who show up when everyone else walks away. Claire's journey wasn't about being perfect. It was about choosing love over fear, truth over silence, and building peace one step at a time. Now I want to turn this moment to you. Have you ever faced a moment where you had to choose between silence and speaking up? Have you witnessed someone stand for what's right when it would have been easier to look away? If you've lived it, if you felt it, we would be honored to hear your story in the comments. Share where you're watching from. Your voice might be the one someone else out there needs to hear tonight. And if this story touched your heart, if it made you think of someone you love or someone you've lost, please consider subscribing to this channel. Here we tell stories that don't just entertain. They heal. They connect. They remind us that no matter how broken the world may seem, there's still light in the quiet corners, and love in the second chances. Thank you for spending this time with us. Your presence means more than you know. Until next time, take care of your heart, and never stop believing in the power of telling the truth.